And we're going live. Okay, welcome to another edition of Midday Coffee with the Bullcritter's Corner. I'm John.
And I'm Steve.
And today we're going to talk about, we're going to start our discussion anyway with the Dawn of Worlds. Actually, we're going to start with general world creation, like some of the things, techniques we use to create worlds, or world building.
World building.
And then, if anybody comes into chat and brings up some other things or other points, we'll go off on some tangents. So, on the topic of world building, first off, we've got different RPGs in which that applies to, right? You got D&D, and you got White Wolf system, and Fallout.
You've got tons of systems. Yeah. World building is world building, no matter what system you're running it in or genre. It's a very broad scope.
Yeah.
Project.
But when you start narrowing down certain things you're trying to accomplish, there'll be different techniques you can use to try to get those things.
Definitely.
And so, world building in D&D. What's your technique? You've been a DM now for what?
When I do it individually,
14 years.
14,
more.
Oh, probably more.
Yeah.
Individually,
like,
world
almost
building.
18 years. Almost 18. But yeah.
Individually, world building for me generally starts very small. I'll pick an area, just not a continent, not anything else. I'll usually just grab a piece of graph paper, figure out what I want the mileage per square to be, which even that seems unnecessary now that I'm saying it, but that's usually where my brain starts. And then I'll just throw a smattering of terrain onto the map. And that's like the core of where I start. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I just go, this is what mountains look like, these are what forests look like, and I just start scribbling crap on a piece of paper. And hopefully once I finish scribbling, once the paper has landmass on it, inspiration needs to start coming. Hopefully while I'm doing it, like while I'm drawing the desert, I might go, you know what would be really cool in a desert? Land sharks. Not like a boule, like frickin' sharks that swim in sand. And I'm like, okay, that's a monster that's there. Who the hell would live in a terrain that has that? And then I start building from there. Which probably seems a little bit wonky, but
No, I can already think of things that can come into that. Like the people that travel in like wind sail ships. Why? Because if you travel with livestock, they're going to get eaten by sharks. And if you're walking, you might get eaten by sharks.
Sure.
And I doubt a human is the kind of person that's going to be able to fight off a shark that can swim through sand.
So, saying that's where I would start. That's usually, which means I'm actually back working myself. There's a lot of other work that needs to be done. If you're building a world to run a game in, be it D&D, Star Wars, Vampire, whatever, there's a handful of basic questions that you should probably be able to answer. First off, you want the adventure to be in a town. So, how big of a town? If you're starting out, your first world building thing, your own creation, shouldn't be a big town. Maybe population 100 or less. You don't need to know who all those 100 people are.
Yeah, that's the starting point. Right?
That's the starting point. So you have the town.
The starting point.
Now, once you have the town, we're playing D&D. There has to be an adventure. There has to be an adventure hook. You may not have a fully developed hook, but maybe at this point, think of 2 to 3 dungeons that could be in the area. And dungeon is kind of a broad scale term. When I say dungeon, I don't necessarily mean every one of them is a delve into an underground area. Maybe in the local area, remember we gave ourselves about 100 miles. Maybe somewhere in the local area there is a goblin camp. Now you know there's a goblin camp, you look at the map. You can't put it too close to town, but you also don't want to put it so far away that you're never going to run into them. So you seed that real quick. You don't have to give it more thought than that at this point. It's a goblin camp, maybe it's a goblin fortress. Who cares? Right now, it's just a place for adventure to happen.
Before I start, like going back to the start, before building the starting point, when I like in my mind, I don't have the experience as a DM as much at all, but for me the first thing is, how do I want the world to feel? Like the first thing I do is I go to like, what am I trying to? Am I trying to do a dark thing or a high fantasy thing, or what is the thing I want to do? Like for the game I want to run,
the theme of your story,
the theme of my game that I want to run with you guys is like the revealing of the spectacular. Like that's why I wanted to build such a base world so that there's very little magic and all that, so that as the game reveals it to you, you get that spectacular feeling you did when you were a young player. First being like the first time you ever saw a dragon go do some crazy shit on a TV show or in a book, when you went, "Oh my god, that is insane! That's awesome!"
The things I wanted to bring that us back into fantasy.
Yeah, and so that's the first thing I do is I do theme, and then I go, okay, well, if I want that theme, what do I need to build? And I know like starting point, same going to starting point, I build a small town.
The theme thing, that's actually, I don't know why I missed that, but yeah, figuring out your general theme that you want is gonna be important because it's essentially part of the foundation. Excuse me, the foundation upon which everything else that you're going to build or going to create from that point forward
gets built. Yeah.
Gets set to. If you decide a low magic world, then you can still have monstrous humanoids like goblins and stuff. But let's say that your concept is it's a world where fantastical creatures are so rare or so uncommon that all you're dealing with is humans. So now instead of building the goblin camp, like I said, now you're going, no, actually it's a barbarian camp.
Yeah, I have to, instead of doing other races, what I have to do now is until those things are revealed to the party, I have to find other humanoids that are like humans that are in different factions, and I have to make sure each of them are unique, and so when you experience them in the role-playing game, it has a different feel like it would if it was another race.
Yeah.
That way, you don't go human, but you go human just long enough to get to the point where you're like, oh man, and dragon. What?
I wouldn't make the jump to dragon in
a
situation
a rock,
where you're always dealing
Medusa.
with... I was going to say, in a
these,
situation where you're predominantly dealing with humans, the moment you drop something, even if it's just like you went into a very dense forest that seemed more natural than any forest you've ever been to, and all of a sudden, although you've been trekking through forests for your entire life, there's a fucking owl bear. You've never seen a bear creature
with an owl face
that has an owl face and feathers.
Yeah, or like so imagine. Okay, so you guys are going into a dungeon because there's still dungeon diving of old human civilizations. Really, what you are at this point in time is what do they call them?
Indiana Jones.
Like
you're an archaeologist. You're an adventuring archaeologist.
Adventuring archaeologist, right?
It's what Hollywood
created. So you're down there, and there's a smooth stone everywhere in a maze, and you're in the smooth stone maze, and you're trying to figure out where it goes, and suddenly you're just hearing thump 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 thump. And you're like, oh, somebody's around coming to attack us, and you're hearing like a roar, and you're like, it must be a barbarian, like it must be this guy's must be some crazy fighter guy, and then for the first time ever, a minotaur comes around the corner, and you're like, it's
actually, I've got another really good one for you. This is one I don't think I've actually ever used against y'all in a role playing scenario. Let's say you've been traveling through a cave system, right?
Yeah.
And as you're traveling through the cave system, all of a sudden you come across a wall that is kind of smooth but ripply. Think kind of like when you spread peanut butter. You know how it's smooth but it has those waves and ripples?
Yeah.
Now, there's no natural erosion that would create that. But on top of that, right next to that wall with the strange ripples, you see a little pile of uncut gems that's just been deposited right next to the wall.
The thing is like you're like, that's not natural, but
no, that's not natural.
But at the same time, you look at it and go, that's not something a human I think could do either. Really, like why would a human do that? There's no purposeful reason for that.
You have nothing there.
Gems.
So you keep going through, and you find a couple other areas where something like this happened, and then you end up finding the Zorn that's been doing it. Zorn is a type of earth creature that literally moves through the earth. It doesn't eat anything, from what I remember. I might be wrong on that, but.
It poops out gems.
The way it moves through the stone is it like transmutes it into a liquidy format so it can move through, so it leaves this weird surface anywhere it hits surface. But the thing is, gems and things like that get caught up in its body, so when it comes out it just kind of deposits them and keeps moving. It's a super weird thing, but it's one of those very alien things that if you make the point of reading about the creature, you can present this really cool thing where, okay, so your adventurers have been going through these caves, and they found a couple of little piles, and they're uncut quartz, so they're quartz chips, maybe 1 or 2 gold value per chip.
If this was a party that like had not seen magical creatures, like they saw one before, they saw an owlbear.
They saw an owlbear
a year back.
Yeah.
Back at the fort. That's the thing, though, is once I started revealing, my concept would have been to, like, let's say...
rapidly.
Not ramp rapidly, right? The idea for me, the way I was trying to pace it out in my head, like if I was doing a film, I was like, okay, so what I'll do is, if it takes me 7 sessions to get to showing the first magical thing, right? Then I'll take half of that. 3.5 sessions later, I show the next magical thing. I'll take half of that. 1.5 sessions, almost 2 sessions later, I show the next magical thing. Then 1 session. We're in Magic World.
It is
it takes about a 5 session.
It is an interesting concept. The problem with that pacing, if there is a problem, is for you to ensure that your players don't just start chasing it, because they might. If you've created the world and you are a very pre-planning type person, so you'll know where the magic world is.
Yeah.
If the players end up, without having that knowledge, end up directing themselves towards it, unless you become...
I will reveal the magic to them.
Unless you become railroady.
No, I wouldn't do... I would... But the thing is... The beautiful thing is there's certain steps that would have to be... Like, because I wanted to be realistic. We were going to keep this in a really... We're real kind of dark real world place. So the places where the magic starts, that you would even notice that it exists, are in such fringes of society that we're talking like the society doesn't exist there. Like, oh, you want to go to the Fey Elf forest, like the forest that's so deep that the Fey still hide there.
There are magical protections.
The only
you
thing
can put in
anywhere
place.
near those are like hermited half elves from back in the day that would rather be on the edge of society than interact and have their elfness revealed and get killed for it.
Sure.
So they would have to go get the rations and go get the thing. And usually people won't do those things if there's not a reason. Like if they go, man, I want to travel up north and blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, well, it'll take 3 months of travel and you're going to need to get these kinds of rations in order to kind of make this trip.
But some people might. That's the beauty of the players. And as you're setting things up, you know your players, so you can gauge where and how you have to put things. Like certain parties are very murder hobos, so they want to kill things. They want to get loot immediately. They're probably less interested in the story. So the slow reveal of fantasy for that group would be a waste. It's not within that group's preferences. It's not within that group's dynamic. And although they might go, oh, that's cool, the glow of it will be much dimmer than with a group that's more interested in the role-playing aspect in the world, learning the world aspect.
Yeah. That's the kind of group that I would need the most for. But I think I would also be good with people that were like they wanted to interact with traps, things like that. But okay, so we go to the starting point. We're at starting point. We build a starting point based on the theme and some other things which you want to accomplish. And then you go, okay, what's around that? And like so for me. Low magic world, no magic almost, no goblins. I don't do goblin camp because
you do humans.
But I just go instead of goblins, they're humans. Okay, they're humans. Why are they there? Oh, they're barbarians, or they're all male mercenary group, or maybe they're tribal nomads.
Right now, you're not at the point where you need to figure that out. You seed your 3 things. Those are your adventure hooks that you'll build once you have the important stuff. Which, that seems like it should be important, but there are some things back in that first town you need to figure out. You need to figure out who's the person that's most likely to be able to tell them anything about the town. Something like a town elder, town mayor. So that's one person you need, right? You probably want a sage. Someone who can tell them about the history of the world. And it's not that the person necessarily is a sage. He might just be Farmer John. Okay?
We got information about the outside world.
But the point is, this is the person, if they come across a tapestry and they decide, I want to ask someone about this because it looked cool or it looked interesting or depicted something, I need to know who they're going to. So even though they might have to ask 10 people who this guy is, eventually I know, because one of the players might be interested in history and doesn't have the role to make the check themselves, they can go to Farmer John and ask, because Farmer John knows everything. Not really, but he knows history. You want some sort of a healer type person, be it a cleric, be it an alchemist, just be it a person who has a good medicine check, a
Well,
herbalist.
this is like a home base world kind of thing, right? So like in my low magic world, it would be a travel through the world.
Yeah, but these are things you still need for that starting area, because even though they may be traveling through the world, for the first 5 or 6 levels, they might not leave this town. They might go 50, 60 miles away from this town, but they're probably still coming back to this town. The starting town, that place, even if it's not the base, is probably where they're going to go back to, because they cut their teeth here. It's where people know them the best.
Yeah, well, it depends on when your world the world building depends on the theme. So my theme was travel and discovery. So the whole point is, from the start, you're hooked into some long-term thing that I'm building out.
Even if you're an expeditions traveler, even British people who did expeditions to Africa and every place, they always come home. So there has to be a home. And that doesn't mean that home has to have tons of anonymities of awesomeness, but actually, since they decided this town is home, they keep coming back to. They may be, hey, alchemist guy, man. What do you need to be better? Do we need to hire some people?
Well, yeah, but
you,
that's literally like city building with the players.
I mean,
that's a technique.
It could be city building, but if they just decide that
I
they
mean, like
want
upgrading home base. Is
sure,
what I'm saying. That's what it is.
But for an expedition style game, it really does fit.
Well, no, not. I mean, like for instance, like where I'm talking Homer's Odyssey. The adventure is the Odyssey. It's like you're gone for your players are leaving this area probably for 20 years, maybe even more. Or like if you come back, it'll be like that.
But the way
short
I don't know,
of
the
breath
way
where
that
you're
works,
reacting to the world now because you don't even recognize it as much anymore with everything else that you've seen.
But the way the Odyssey works, and the way I think that kind of story works, is you left home for a reason.
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm saying.
You're far away from home, coming back. Homer's
Yeah,
Odyssey
that's
is
what I'm
coming
saying.
home.
Is the like that's why I'm saying you're not working out of home base, because my adventure is okay.
Yeah, but what's the reason we went all the way out?
That's the hook you play in, and whichever hooks the players grab onto are the ones that I tie into that as it's
because I was going to say,
unfolding.
like Homer's Odyssey, the reason he went away was for war.
Yeah. Or Argonauts, same
For
concept.
war.
They had to go fleece, and there's always the adventure, And so that's what I'm saying is I wasn't planning on the adventure being discovering this world. I don't make this world is mostly known the way any educated person in medieval Europe would have known the world at the time. They know the countries there. They know general stereotypes of all these people, and mostly everything's laid out, and they know a lot of the
Sure.
And that's general knowledge for anybody who's intelligent enough to be have been exposed to that.
Well, usually if they went to adventure somewhere else other than the ultra rich, it was like, I'm doing a pilgrimage to Jerusalem.
Yeah,
But then they already knew where the end goal was.
Yeah. But like the idea with building the theme, like your guy, the character you were going to build was a character who just wanted to go adventure and be a hero.
He wanted
like
to get away.
Storybooks.
No, he wanted to get away.
So once you get hooked into the adventure, the next step of the adventure is the thing that I keep you with the adventure.
Sure.
And then you just uncover more and more and more until the adventure causes something for you to come back. And the hopeful end goal would be another huge war, like the end of the Lord of the Rings.
Okay, but
or
my thinking,
The Hobbit, really, where they're all coming to one battle.
My thinking for that character, much like I would say my thinking for most characters, which I don't see happen very often, is the periods in between adventures. Because let's say, okay, we go off and we travel for a year out, and we accomplish something. I don't even know what it is, but something enough that I've got money in my pocket.
Yeah.
I've been risking my life for a year, man. I want to go back home and breathe for a minute.
Well, here's the thing. So you've just been traveling for a year in the first place. You finally found a positive respite, right? So maybe you stay in the Elven kingdom for a month. And then while you're there and you're like, yeah, you know what? It's about time I need to get home. Oh, my goodness, a quest gets called up that we could help with. And we get tied into the next thing.
So, okay, but you're still leading with downtime. Okay.
Because that's what happened. I mean, yeah. Like in Odyssey. Like, I mean, technically it's an encounter, right? Because, but they chilled on an island making love and drinking a bunch for a whole minute.
Yeah,
before
that's
they got
something
turned into
that I
animals and
find a
stuff.
bit frustrating with, from a DMing standpoint, and even from a player standpoint. It seems like parties never go, okay, we just did this massive thing. Can we breathe for a minute?
Yeah. Can we like get personal development and inner development, like as not just as a hero, but as a person? Like, that's one of the things. Hopefully, at the end of this, what would end up happening is you'd be gone off for a long time, come back, and we got viewers.
Yeah.
Hey guys. Come back from that huge trip and then look at the world that they grew up in and realize
And see how it
the
changed.
issues of the ignorance of it
Yeah.
and the way they've changed compared to it and the way it's changed. But that's tangible from world building. So you create your starting area. You create a few story hooks and what do you say, 3 multiple encounter areas, like 3 dungeons.
I was just
or-
thinking
or
encounter
enemy
areas. When you
settlement, or-
throw them out, you aren't really worried about building the hooks for them at that point. Because the thing is, right now you need to figure out a couple of core things about the town. The person who is the sage or healer type person,
the mayor, that can give you information about that particular
there's
town.
probably a good reason to have someone who knows something about. In yours, it wouldn't be so good because it's low magic, no magic. But in most D&D settings, there should be a wizard of some sort, or maybe not a wizard, but someone who has the ability to help you with an Arcana check if you come across one. Be that an elderly sage.
Well,
who,
it depends on the city, though. If this is like I start you off in a rural farming village,
I retired back to the town that I used to come from. I made it to 2nd level wizard over 50 years. I'm a dude who sits in a house, enjoys the fact that I made 50 gold 20 years ago.
Gotcha.
I'm just a dude. I'm a dude who can cast like 3 spells, and I have a good Arcana check. You found a scroll. Oh, let me see the scroll. I can't read it, but I know who you can go to.
I get what you're saying. Like things that
Like,
can
the thing
tie
is,
you into other
he's
areas.
there
and quests.
as a story hook or a additive to your hook, but he's also there just for, oh my god, you guys found a ring. No one here has identify, and no one has an Arcana check for some strange reason. There's old dude Steve in town. Why do we talk to old dude Steve? We don't. Everyone thinks old dude Steve is weird.
But we also
Actually,
know he does
the last
magic-y
the
stuff.
last person that visited old Steve's house was talking about the broom floating around and cleaning the floor on its own while old dude Steve was drinking coffee. And everyone thinks he is insane. But he does have a floating broom, and we have a shiny ring. Let's go talk to old dude Steve.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Building those things, and you just have to find ways to
No,
make
you
sense.
don't make it that there's this massively powerful wizard out in rural bumfuck Egypt town. No, it's a dude who's just a little bit. Like, by the time the characters are 3rd level, old dude Steve might be an interesting enough character to come back and talk to, but his usefulness has waned because the players have
advanced beyond
beyond him.
Yeah.
And essentially, there's a couple more points, but they're these small points that you need to know about the town. So maybe your town doesn't have an old dude Steve, but the historian guy goes, well, this town 3 towns over, or 3 days away, I think there was a sage that used to live there. I mean, I haven't been there in 50 years.
Yeah, and then that's a hook for the players.
And now
to
you have a
try
hook to go to another town, which now you've
and now
started to
you're
build the web
expanding
work.
and building out. So you build out as the construct comes because, and I think that's because you know that whatever you plan, the players aren't going to follow it to a T.
Oh no, the players.
So instead,
won't.
just plan an idea and then bake it into what the players walk themselves into.
Now, again, like I said, seed the 3 things. With those 3 things, it's not the same as with building a module because you have to have very specific ideas, right? With mine, I would seed the 3 things and I'd go, okay, so we have the bandits or the goblins, either scenario, and they built an encampment. Where did they build the encampment? Now I need to look at the map. Let's say that they built it in an old wrecked fort. So now I've already got 2 dungeons in one area. Technically. You got the encampment that's in the old fort, but the old fort might have a cellar.
Yeah, we have the old fort to go to.
So I've got technically 2 in 1, but I'm only counting it as 1. Now they decide we're going to be brash, we're going to go in there and we're just going to kill everyone. Okay, cool. That's what you do. that may have its own ramifications, whatever they are for the story. But while you're going through the fort, just murking everyone out, you find a tapestry. It's partially burned or damaged, but there's a image on it of, let's say there's an image of an elf that has 3 winged creatures that look kind of humanoid floating around it, and you see that in the elf there's 3 feathers are sticking in him. One in his eye, one in his lung, and one in his hamstring. You're like, that's weird. What is that? What is that? Well, okay. But someone's like, no, that's interesting enough. I want to take that. And they take it and they bring that back to Farmer John the Sage. And now you take the time, you step back, and you create some sort of a
backstory as to
backstory
why that
of what
fort was there a long time ago, and then the knowledge that there was an underground cellar with a prison or this or that back then, and then they go back there and go into that area.
My thought was building a I forget the word for it now. Not an epic, like a legend. So you build the legend, and then this guy goes, actually, this old empire, the Tashiran Empire had this story about this prince. This prince wanted to marry someone, but the father was like, no, you can't marry her. And then he pressed the subject and went and became a hero because that's what the king said he had to do to, gain the right to marry. And the king was like, shit, this guy's a hero now. I'm going to ask my God to send people to kill him, and then you create this myth.
Yeah.
And then, the Sage John, Farmer John, might not have the full myth. He might just be like, there was this story about a hero from the Tiefling Nation of Tashir, and something about feathers, I don't know.
And the hook that goes back to the fort, or the
And back in the fort, you might find more context.
No, I'm saying, like, you can use the first dungeon to then link to the second dungeon through stuff like that.
And then you might have just accidentally created a quest chain that the players may or may not follow. It doesn't have to be a primary one at this point. But it's an ability to, maybe we make 3 relic feathers that have different poisons. Or maybe the hero had a magical weapon that he used to slay these 3 magical flying beasts.
Now maybe you find those things.
And you can find the pieces of it.
Pieces that lead to the other pieces.
Or maybe it's that you need to collect the 3 feathers that poisoned him, that killed him, because those 3 feathers unlock the cachet of his equipment when he was a legendary hero.
Yeah, see, when I build, I would rather build out the way that we have our storyboard and stuff, where I'm like, no, I have all these quests, but here's the difference, though, right? I think what I'm coming to in my mind now, what needs to happen is you have those because you have reasons for them in the world. But if the players just avoid them and go to completely different areas, you find ways to bake those back in, so you're not rebuilding entire encounters.
You need the broad ideas. I think the way we have it up here on the board, which I wish we had another camera so we could just, But we essentially built a storyboard for the module we're working on. The beauty of having quests laid out like this is that right now, the way we have them up there versus what we're writing for the module is they have a title, a very brief description, and I could literally pick up the secret cache, and right now we have 3 ways or 2 ways to get to it.
Yeah.
Well, I know what I need essentially as an idea of how to get to it. Can I bake it into this area the players just went to? Can I bake it into?
Yeah. Can I retake this and just apply it to this new area? And transpose that, because then I have all of that, and I go, no, what I want is, I want them at first level to be doing these things, to these things, and these things, and these things, and these things.
For
and whatever flavor they
things,
want, let them go pick the flavor of it.
For the transposing things, something that I've done in the past a couple of times, and I'm starting to lean more on wanting to do it again, is picking up some of the pre-made modules that exist for D&D. Hell, I mean, you can do it for any system. I'm just thinking D&D because that's what we're playing the most. You pick one of those modules up and you just go, this dungeon, it has a bit of a backstory, but can I boil it down to something that'll fit in my world? How much work will I have to do to make this make sense in my world? Oh, I just have to link it to a legendary wizard?
I gotta change some of the creatures. I gotta just a little bit.
So most of what I'm doing isn't really creation now, it's slight retooling. Okay, this is something that's already prepared. I've got a 5-level dungeon that'll take 5 or 6 sessions, probably more than that, but let's say 5 or 6 sessions with content that's prepared. Now, I do have to read through it. I have to take my notes so I can run it without sounding like, like someone who hasn't read the content. But if I need some time to fill out the story that I've been running, I can throw this as a tempting hook. And if I know my players, I can figure out a way to make that hook tempting enough. The players will pursue this, and that gives me 5 or 6 sessions. If you're running every week, that's 5 or 6 weeks. If you're running every 2 weeks, you've just doubled to tripled the amount of time you have to prepare your homemade content. The other thing, there's no saying that you can't take just the maps and a few of the concepts and then just throw your own content into it. In this regard, you've got half of the work done, so it's still efficient.
Like
it's still
you find
effective.
ways to bake in, and then also you'll find a lot of inspiration in those that go, oh, you know what, that's a cool idea, but I would twist it this way, or I'd flip it this way.
There's a lot of cool ideas. Actually, one that I read recently that I really liked. It was the new Temple of Elemental Evil one. I forget what it's called. I think it's Princes of the Apocalypse. And what the evil cultists are doing is they're creating these bombs, these regional bombs from elemental nodes. And they're elementally based. So if I take a fire bomb, it doesn't do a huge fireball. What it does is it changes the regional temperature, the regional climate in the area to be like a super drought where wildfires are highly possible. And the heat is so bad that if you don't if you don't have a certain amount of water for the day, you start stacking exhaustion levels.
Oh, that could be killer.
For the water one, it creates torrential rains and mudslides and floods. And, I mean, each one of them has these effects. And I was like, actually, that's a really cool idea. Like, this is something you're doing your own little adventure. You've got your own personal story, and then all of a sudden you've been making sure to tell the characters about the weather, which some DMs don't do, and it's an extra little slice of awesome that you can flavor. But if you've been making sure to flavor and give them the idea of the fact that the weather has been a certain way, and then all of a sudden, while they're doing their own thing, all of a sudden it's just drought season, 110, 115 degree weather,
the
constantly.
season just
like
changed.
the season shifted. Like you guys were at the beginning of winter, and all of a sudden it's like hyper summer. They're gonna be like, "What the hell's going on?" And then if they decide not to, all of the farmers, all of the NPCs they interact with have the need to comment about it, because what do we do when the weather shifts?
Bitch about the weather.
Bitch about the weather. And we're talking about minor shifts. Imagine you were in 3-foot snow, and then all of a sudden tomorrow it's 120 degrees, and the forest 3 towns over just caught fire. Like wildfire caught
The
fire.
end times are coming. Oh Lord, take me.
So, looking at things like that for inspiration for ideas is also fantastic. If you're feeling a drought of inspiration at the moment, there's tons of sources of inspiration. Pre-made modules are great. Just jump into a movie. Watch a movie. Hollywood is full of bad ideas, but it's full of great ideas.
So looking back, well, that's a great idea too. Some of the best one-offs I've ever played, the world building was almost entirely created by mashing up 2 movies.
Yeah. Doing mashups and...
Like we're gonna mash up Saving Private Ryan and Predator. Boom, boom. There we go.
Hey, how's it going? Human Robot. I love the name.
Hey, what's up, man? So moving from D&D to world building for other games, though. Like
Okay.
so, world building for one-offs, like Cthulhu, or one-off sessions, or for White Wolf.
Okay, so something for a more modern, like our current time frame.
Yeah, current time frame. What are the important things to build in those kinds of games?
See, I don't really consider what I do in that one world building. Usually, I try to use a city that is a reference point that all of us that are playing can attach to. We live in Texas, so some of the cities I've used when we've run here is I actually used our town, which didn't make as much sense a couple times. But other places I've used are Austin or Dallas.
Places that the players that are in the group
That players have
recognize,
a
so
recognition
you can
of,
lend on, like lean on a bunch of that for where the locations are and things, because it's modern times.
Yeah.
Things.
The other reason for a modern game I like to pick large cities, metropolises, is if I say there's a tattoo shop, no one questions. There's no thought process that you can't find at least one tattoo shop in Dallas or Austin.
Yeah.
If you said, I want to find a gun store, that's not a problem. I want to
find a chemical plant. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Nothing you can pick. I want to find a military installation. I'm sure there we can find
it's
one.
a couple of hours away from where you're at, but we can do it. So,
yeah.
For modern games, I usually try to pick a metropolis because almost everything will be there.
Unless the theme for the game is separate.
Yeah. So...
Like we did that Hunter the Reckoning game where all three of us were like West Virginian hunter-trapper folk trying to hunt down werewolves. And at no point in time were we in a large city. Charleston isn't even a large city.
That was a bit different, but again, we have a concept of we all have a concept of what should be in a rural area. And if I had come across something where everyone else in the room was like, no, that would, like, let's say for some reason you guys were like, we want to find a gun shop. And I was like, there's no gun shop here.
We're in a rural area.
If I went, there's no gun shop here, that would completely break immersion. We all know that in rural America, you're going to find a gun shop.
There will be, in places.
I mean, even if you might have to drive an hour to the slightly bigger but tiny town.
Well, it depends. Are you in Utah?
I don't know anything about Utah, brother.
I don't know.
I've never been.
Or like, I think they still do guns, actually. That's like the real to life game where you're like, we're gonna build the hometown city. That's actually really helpful for games like Vampire or any of the White Wolf games, I think, because it really does kind of bake this immersion in.
It certainly builds immersion, and then if you pick,
plus nobody questions distance, nobody questions drive time. Everybody knows what the traffic's like at a certain time of day. Yeah. Like there's certain things about the world that all the players know inherently. There's no discussion even needed.
There's no discussion needed. If you go, I'm driving from Austin to Dallas, no one goes, how long does that take us? Because we have a time limit.
Because we've been there, yeah.
We've been there enough times, and of course, it's because I picked a local area to us.
Or if you just pick, like the town we're from, you can go, I'm going to go down to the gas station over here, and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about, how to get there, and what's nearby, and all the other things.
Yeah.
But recently we're using Dawn of Worlds. I don't know, have you ever used Dawn of Worlds, Human Robot? Or Safka? Sfak?
You moved the chat again, didn't you?
AKA? Oh, no, that's just OBS being a punk, I think.
Oh, we'll deal with it later.
Yeah, no, I was going to say is, we're using this thing, Dawn of Worlds, this, what it is it's a game for world building and world creation.
Yeah.
And so the way it works is it's like broke down in ages, where you have a first age, a second age, and a third age. Everybody kind of creates a general landscape of like a land mass.
You start with a very basic shape, and then you start building out the rivers and mountains and forests.
And so each age you have a different point cost for different things. So like in the first age, the cheapest things to do are to build and change land masses. Yeah. Which by the third age becomes the hardest thing to do. And so the first thing you're doing is you're building land masses. Each player takes turns. You roll and you get so many points to use per turn. And then you can use those points to shape land, shape climate, and eventually create race, create sub-race. And so what ends up happening is throughout the ages, you and the other players build out an entire map with races and back history for that world.
You build civilizations. You build... For me... The hope from the game was to get the inspirational value of everyone at the table. And the other benefit to doing a collaborative build is instead of me writing tons and tons of pages of history, which will be impossible for me to ever deliver because there's no sensible way to deliver it without making everyone at the table roll their eyes and fall asleep. It gives you guys, the players, since you were there during the creation, the benefit of having seen the creation. So that way, when I put a tapestry in, even though your character has no idea about why these human sailors decided to butcher a ton of hobgoblins, when you see a tapestry that depicts this naval force bombarding a bunch of goblins, you can go, as a player, I actually remember this. And then as a character, of course, they have no context, but it gives these little nuggets of extra kind of shine for the players. If you didn't have the players involved in the world creation, you put the same image on something, one of the players might go, what are those ships shooting at those people? And that might be the only attachment they get, and then they may or may not decide to pursue it, but...
Yeah, everybody understands a little bit of that history and why it's there. One of the things that I think I like about it is the idea of
Collaborative creation?
Collaborative creation, like you were saying, but at the same time, like, you're able to... We've played it, 4 or 5 times now. And what it seems is that you're able to kind of build a project too. You can pick one race or something in a way and kind of like go, oh, I've got something really interesting here. I know what I'll do is I'll bake this in. But what I find in the game that might actually be better is if everybody, instead of building one-off individual races that you advance, is if everybody did just have avatars. Because what you do is you create an avatar, and it gives you a cheap way of... And an avatar is something like a dynasty of kings and heroes, or
a legendary
figure, or like a demigod, maybe.
That would be a legendary figure.
Yeah, oh, okay. Or, a dragon.
Legendary figure.
Yeah. And that person can create cities and do other things.
They can use the abilities, certain abilities that you would normally pay more points for a much cheaper cost.
Yeah, so you can get more done. And you can build avatars in other people's things, but nobody seems to build a lot of avatars in other people's races.
You could.
If almost the whole game was everybody having avatars and everybody's stuff, and everybody built out their stuff and then found ways to do infighting and other things.
I believe part of our problem is that, again, the map is huge.
Yeah.
And
last time we did this was on a huge map.
Instead of building in a collaborative context, it felt like one person picked this little corner and just worked on that. One person picked all of the ocean but only worked on that. One person picked this mountain range and then worked only on that. One plateau and worked only on that. And then me as the DM, although I did have a project that I was dumping more points towards, I kept going, okay, I'll do one big dump here and then everything else goes over here. And it just trying to spread to build more stuff. Because for me, the idea, which isn't the idea of the game, but for me the idea was to have multiple ages. I was hoping that we would see several civilizations, so some of them could fall.
Yeah.
That way I would have this layer of ruins, so you have these dungeons. Because in a broad scheme world building, and this isn't how I've always thought about it, this is something that came from watching other people talking about world building. When you have dungeons and ruins, where do those things come from?
Yeah, they come from the old civilizations.
They come from fallen civilizations. So for me, now, when I think about a world that I'm adventuring in, that I'm playing or running characters in, I expect it to be 3 or 4 ages in. I expect there to be 4 or 5 different major empires that have come to power and fallen. Maybe not all in the same area, but across the landmass. Some of those empires may have brushed up against each other. Some of them haven't. Like, for Solaria, the main continent, my idea was the last major empire, the one that is the age before the one we're playing in, was the Magocracy, the Consortium of Enlightenment. And they ended up controlling a massive chunk of the landmass. But before they took power, the age before that, the 2 empires that held major sway on the landmass was the Ogre Mage Empire and the Yuan-Ti Empire. Both of those came toppling down because I have in that region there were the hobgoblins were kind of like the Khans, the Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
And they rampaged over both empires, essentially setting them up for a fall. And then the Khans kind of broke up into smaller subsects when their one legendary leader fell. So now I've got these other layers. I've got the Ogre Magi that ended up having an empire that was more, I think I picked like an Indian style for their architecture and the way their weapons and things look. The Yanti had the kind of faux Egyptian jungle thing going. The other empire that really didn't have a major impact on other empires, but still was built up on that main continent, were the Minotaurs. So I've got all of these different ruins that still, some of their people still exist, but not in the imperial concept that they had.
Yeah, not as an empire with huge structures.
They're a race in decline.
Yeah, and that's like so in that what the intent is everybody just creates upon each other. I think some of the biggest things that you can come into conflict with here is if there's people that just say no. But by the time we got done the final time we played this, we kind of determined that collaborative effort. My overall conclusion at the end of this was that this was a system that was designed to make world creation collaborative and fun. And by its design, the way it works, it turns it into a competition that you have to grind for. And so what ends up happening is one person in the system usually ends up building a bunch of stuff. See, like in the other one where you did it with another group, you guys said everybody just built up their own thing. But if one of you had gone in and completely destroyed the other thing in all of its ways over here and there, that person might get upset.
It's possible. I mean, while I was doing it with them, I had things of mine destroyed, and I never went to the aggressive, I'm going to catastrophe you because you attacked me.
Yeah, so it's like it plays out a little bit, right? Like you want it to play out like as a history. And so another thing is like the building the reasons for things. Like not specifically all of these things, but if you build an avatar, then the avatar should have a purpose. So there's a particular type of thing that avatar is, right? And it's operating for a certain cause. That's why it's great. It's a legendary hero.
It's a legendary hero. It's a bloodline. It's
so there's something to it though. If it's a dynasty or a bloodline, there's some kind of structure, idea, theme behind.
There has to be some sort of theme for it to make sense for it to hold sway. But at the same time, it may not be on you to have to create that. The thing is, in that collaborative game, sometimes it might just be that other people, maybe you don't have an idea. Maybe you just were like, I wanted to build that avatar. And then you go, I don't know, I built it. Then people can start pitching ideas. That's not the situation we ran into, and I know what you're complaining about. But it is collaborative, so if someone doesn't have a good idea, start throwing ideas. That's collaboration.
Like that's the idea too. So if instead of each person was building up one thing, which this game seems to kind of lend itself to, even though like it doesn't, there's no competition here. No one wins. There's no points at the end. There's no victory points. What ends up happening is you have to save up so many turns of points to kind of get this image you want down on paper that when somebody interferes with it in some way here or there, it's like, oh man, I couldn't even get my image out.
I don't know.
But what it should be is I'm not trying to get I have an avatar in everybody's race, and I'm doing things in everybody's race, and everybody's doing things in my race.
If you wanted to do that, then
because if every player was invested in almost all the things that are on the board, and they were working against themselves in almost every capacity as part of the way they were working, then there would be no attachment to anything but the storytelling element, which is what it should be. Is everybody should be wanting to create a really cool, interesting story.
Well, I agree with the interesting story thing, but if your idea was to influence other people's stuff in that way...
No, that wasn't my idea until after I'm getting through the process of realizing... No, because I was trying to actually do the opposite, because I wanted to be respectful of other players, so I wanted to keep hands off and let other players do what they were doing, so it wouldn't be too interfering. The only time I interfered in the first game is somebody made Frost Giants, and this was like the third race that was made in the first age, which it kind of shuns you to make races in the first age, and they were all evil.
Yeah.
And I was like, good alignment, and because another player was doing it too. So both players piled in on the good alignment and made the Frost Giants good alignment.
I do say,
but like this
just doing the alignment thing was one thing where you guys were throwing it around like that. When I did this thing with the other group, what I found interesting is when someone went to purify an area, like I built the Ganassi Empire and it started neutral. One of the characters that had very specifically not just a good aligned society, but also was very particular about their avatar being a good aligned avatar, was like, so my avatar is actually going to move to the Ganassi, this particular Ganassi city,
And purify it.
and she's there teaching her rhetoric, which is why it's being purified, and I'm purifying the city.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reasoning behind it.
So those were some of the steps that were missed when we were doing it. But the system doesn't say that there has to be that. It was
that's the whole point of the system, is for world building, which is the story.
Yeah.
So if you're not building the story, you're just building these steps. That means you're building the story later. You're back building it, which you can do, but it's a lot easier to do with 4 or 5 people in a room.
It is.
What I was going to say though is in the first time we did it, the reason 2 players helped make the Frost Giants good is because one person purify the Frost Giants, and then literally on the same turn, another player said, no, I don't like that. They're back to normal again. And it's like, what's the story behind that? Like, they kind of got cool with each other, and then they became whatever again. Like, it's not really a ride. It's not a story. It's like a bump in the road.
The era in which, but you're from a points and system concept, it was like a bump in the road. But the purification and then unpurification in the era it was happening in was a 500-year gap.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
So in 500
it's
years,
almost not even noticeable of a change.
Well, no, but in 500 years, now we have this thing where we go, there was a moment where they started to have these thoughts, and then the more oppressive people were like, no, we're just going to crush you, kill you, and throw you into the
I'm saying
fort.
is +1 up in their range is like not... Like, here's the thing. If they would have went back down after they got up to +3... I would have been like, okay, I'm down with that. I'll even throw points into it.
No, it would have been more significant.
But there's no story if it's just... Well, we had this one guy had a thought that said, I think people should be treated
but how many
decently.
How many times in the world have there been sudden small rises, very small, and then they were quelled before they could ever become a thing? No,
they were like big rises that happened in one, you know what I mean?
No,
like
when
one area or one people.
When they were big, they became memorable points in history. But how many times was there a shift that was quickly quashed?
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't make that like what. That's not the history that this like you're trying to build for your role playing game.
No, but
because that history is literally cut out of the final story you tell because there's nothing of interest there.
But that's essentially what that plays out as. So for you, who's looking for why it makes sense, there was
that's what I'm saying is it makes sense, but not in a game where you're trying to tell
the purpose of the game, it's counterintuitive to the purpose of the game.
Sense, yeah.
But the thing is, historically, which is part of what is making...
make sense in a historical sense. You just have to find the story that makes sense. Yeah. And some of them are going to get wild and crazy.
Now,
like
honestly,
the centaurs who want to sail ships.
Honestly,
there had been a centaur that said, you know what would be a good idea? I'm going to take some wood out on the ocean and I'm going to get on top of it. Now, I have no problem with that, but that means that particular centaur, for his people... was
an
bat
oddity.
Crapped. Like,
now,
he was out of his mind. He was...
Before you started doing a theological...
Sorry. You know what I'm saying? Like,
before you do a theological shift or a popularity shift like that in a place, it would make sense for you to either move your avatar there, an avatar that affects that particular mindset, or build an order there that begins making that change. So if someone's like, I really don't like that, it's not just... that you're coming back in and downshifting it. Maybe, like, let's say you had, what was one of the good avatars in our thing? Let's say the beaver folk, was he good?
Yeah, well, neutral.
Oh, okay, neutral. Let's say that for whatever reason, it doesn't make any sense in my brain right now, but for whatever reason, the beaver folk avatar strolled down to Morgoth Fortress, the hobgoblin capital. And I was like, you guys need to be more neutral. And he started spreading his concepts of neutrality and transcendence. And you go, I'm going to shift their thing. I'd be like, okay, that makes sense.
It makes sense. There's an explanation.
Now I go, we don't like him here. And the only way I can kill... an avatar is to have an order commit to doing it or create a tragedy, a catastrophe. So I go... This next 100 years, a order slowly begins to form with the pure concept of assassinating the beaver paragon And through that 100 years, several people have tried to kill him, but he is a special entity.
Yeah.
So now, when I do the shift to bring me back to step 1 evil, it's because there's this group of people that aren't just propaganda banging the door, but they're also trying to kill him. And then in a few more turns, I might actually make the attempt to kill him. Now if I use an order to kill your...
5 points, you can bring him back.
Yeah, you can bring him back, which was really representative of your guy managing to dip out of the way or surviving the poisoning. And you build this.
So, for the viewer's sake, the things that you can do in this are create race, create sub-race, command city. And the things that you're doing when you're commanding race and city are building armies, you're building structures, you're building new cities themselves. You can advance civilizations or cities, which means you can make them experts in certain things. You can purify and corrupt, which is what we've just been talking about, which moves alignment of that society up or down a nudge. Events, which are these...
They can be positive or negative events. There are things like founding a special resource or... a major storm sweeping through an area, a hurricane knocking out a bunch of ships.
That's more of a catastrophe, I believe.
Nope, that's an event.
Event says changing the fortunes for an avatar, order, city, or civilization. A gold mine might be found. A storm at sea may strike a fleet. Exactly here. An avatar may escape death. Plague, famine, drought may strike. Technologies might be lost. These are great unplanned winds of fortune that blow through the history of the world.
Yeah, catastrophes are like a mountain of fire is dropped onto a civilization by God.
Yeah, a whole city is destroyed. Advancements of a city is destroyed. Avatars are killed.
Yeah, those are the big thing. That's another thing that I found strange that we didn't really get to address. We had a lot of civilization expansions, right? In the previous version the previous time that I ran this, players advanced cities. Like, there was what are they called? The little goat people. Satyrs.
Oh, okay.
There's a satyr city in the other world, and one of their things, they were grandmaster glassmakers or glass blowers. Like, that city, they didn't have any special technology about, like, there might have been other places.
But it's a great trade city.
But that city right there produces fine crystals.
See, and now you have a trade good that's actually worth trading.
There was another city for the satyrs that was like they weren't grandmaster brewers, but this city made the finest wines in the region. Also, that city happened to also make the most potent poisons in the region.
If somebody did trade, it would make sense because there are things to trade.
But it's something like no one specialized their city. We have a few interesting buildings. The hobgoblins have the Grand Port. The Menang, the water-based humans, have that legendary lighthouse. The dwarves have the forge.
The fortress for the humans.
The humans have a legendary fortress. In Brigantine.
Brigantes.
Brigantes. I was close-ish.
Yeah.
Damn it. The Frost Ogres have the Obsidian Tower. We have some
the
Frost Giants have the furnace,
but
there's a couple. But the thing is, like, there could have been more. It could have been more interesting. Like, there are realms of interest that
there's something else I had come to the thought of for that too, for an issue with the game. Finish your thought, please, on that. Though, actually,
all I was going to say is I was hoping that there would be more legendary ideas.
Yeah, more legendary things.
The thing is, the reason it would have been cool to have more of these ideas is I intend to, like, this game runs 3 ages. I'm thinking where we're currently playing is like the 7th or 8th age. So I'm going to take and generate about 3 more ages worth of bullshit that's happening. And some of these societies are going to be flatlined or in recession, so there's actually dungeons and ruins to explore. Now, that doesn't mean that societies whole scale are going to be gone, but the Brigantes family, like one of their...
they're dead.
They're dead, but on top of being dead, there will be like maybe the main fortress, the legendary fortress, was lost. And now all that's left is the crypts underneath it, where hundreds of Brigante family, because the family's been around for, what, at this point, almost 1,000 years?
A bit more.
Yeah, so a massive crypt, like an underground complex. Now, what's down there? Maybe undead, maybe just other things, who knows? But maybe that's all that's left of the legendary fortress. Or maybe just one tower that tells people that's where the Brigantes place used to be, but you don't go there. It's not safe anymore. Maybe because they lost the war to the frost trolls. There's frost trolls there now, and they've turned it into a breeding pit to, further spit in the face of the people that beat them back 1,000 years ago.
Or it's like a really large, like the one in like the Dwarven Fortress in Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like this huge abandoned.
Maybe
thing.
it still stands in opulence, just overgrown and
Yeah, no one wants to go near it because of the hauntings.
Yeah.
No, one of the problems I had with this that they don't really address in the conflict section. So you build armies, and then the armies go to the armies, and it kind of turns into a little risk game to see who wins what. And you don't really wipe out other races and things. What you end up doing is you take away resources by destroying a city.
Really, though,
destroy the city.
You can, but you have to pay extra to destroy a city.
Yeah, you do. But I'm saying if you do things like that, all you're really leaving is an imprint in the history of this battle and war that happened. One of the things that I found a problem with, though, was there's no discussion of war distance.
Yeah.
So the idea would be I create an army in the city. That city's going to go over here and attack them. Well, that could be across the map all the way.
How long does it take you to march your army there?
And so we were thinking about how we were having problems where, okay, so there are military alliances are something that you can do in the game. But if somebody attacks you, they're going that war is going to completely play out before your ally gets to travel to you.
Your ally has the first turn, so he can't even react to it.
If somebody said, hey, I'm going to attack that person, what would be a little bit more convenient in this system would be something that said, okay, we're going to look at the distance. Okay, you get there in 100, like for how long it'll take you, you'll get there in this many, like in one turn or two turns. That gives the allies chances to send their army over too.
But then when you're talking about the spread of time, like in the Second Age, each round is 100 years.
Yep.
I understand that the conflict...
No, to travel across the world and logistically support yourself. Or you can go right now with really horrible logistics and take a -3.
But, I mean,
you know what I'm
if
saying?
you're logistically just moving by sea, which most ancient armies, unless they were 100% landlocked, would travel near waterways. Yeah. Even if it's just a massive river, they travel near waterways specifically because it allows the transportation of your supply chain. It doesn't take them 100 years to go... If they went from California to New York, it doesn't take them 100 years. It doesn't take an army 100 years to move that far. The Chinese proved that they could move armies with even terrible, bureaucratically clusterfucked logistics. They could move hundreds of thousands of people from one side of China to the other in less than a year.
But what I'm saying is like...
Oh, the combat system needs to be reworked.
The combat system.
No.
Not,
The combat system is shite. But
like you can find
your idea doesn't fit within the...
Well,
the conflict system in general...
If they're landlocked, and now they're technically in our world waterlocked, so short of the one group that can travel on water, no one else is allowed to, so they are landlocked. So if the hobgoblins wanted to fight the humans, it would take them like 3 years to travel up there to do that.
Well, just because of the mountains, yes. I mean, they
or
have
more even possibly.
They have the imposition of having to move through a mountain range.
Well, same with the humans going to the hobgoblins. They got to go through tons of dense forests and over rivers and mountains and lakes that they've never explored before.
Yeah.
They don't even know what direction your army is in.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're marching a massive legion in a direction, you probably already scouted. You aren't just going to blindly lead 100,000 men with a supply chain forward. It's
doesn't work.
Stupid.
Yeah, you have to have a reason.
And then even if you didn't have a supply chain, as long as they're moving across fertile land, they just rape and pillage the land as they go. That's what armies did. Like when armies moved in the medieval era.
Yeah, but there's no army exploratory force that's that large, like in the era we're talking about.
So no, the conflict system, the combat system in general. I think they added the system. It feels very basically Risk-esque, but it was garbage.
Yeah, we're talking about Dawn of the Worlds right now. If anybody's ever played or has any questions about world building, because we're about to wrap it up actually, for our midday coffee. Unless anybody has anything they'd like to discuss.
Ran out of coffee about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I ran out of coffee. I keep trying to take more sips of it. It's not there.
You didn't get that water bottle, did you?
No, I didn't get that water bottle either, so I'm actually, like, dehydrated as well.
But yeah, it's an interesting...
it's worth reading for sure, because it gives a ton of cool ideas on how you could, make something...
I think if you were going to use it in its most basic format, you would drop conflict out. I think you'd use it to generate the terrain, seed a couple of nations, and see how they spread over one era. And then I would take that framework, which just sounds counterintuitive and extra work, but I would take that framework and then go into Microscope and use Microscope to flush it out. But Microscope is in-depth itself, and maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. I like Microscope.
So my conclusion, like I said, it by its nature,
if you turn
it pits people against each other in a way, because what it is okay, so by its design, what it intends is for everybody to come together and smoothly create something.
Yes.
But what it does is it creates this pressure of time that you have to create these points that you need to do things, and then people have issues when things happen. I think that the best way to do this is my conclusion, the best way I can do this would be to just get everybody at the table and be mature and talk and find ways to compromise on why things are happening, and all of us just come up with ideas. If you have a mature group of players already,
sure,
I would suggest using Dawn of Worlds as an idea, things like creating avatars, like the idea of all those things, and get to a table and just talk about it and agree on it. But if you're a bit younger of a group, you've got people that already have issues, this structure could give you the rule set you need so that it doesn't devolve into just a petty arguing.
Which it'll probably
do it anyway, but at least you'll go, no, there's rules, here are the points.
I'm just going to have to say that although I agree that the system can turn very competitive, it can. At the same time, I have now run it with a group where it didn't turn competitive, and I've run it with a group... Yeah, but none of you
interfered with each other.
We did.
Like at all.
No, we did, though. There were wars. Someone literally split the continent in half and shattered one of the other players' cities.
Yeah, but did any of your players go, that guy's planning on doing this, I'm going to go do this, or... that guy's doing this one thing, I don't like it, I'm going to have somebody come in and completely change what he's doing over there. Reset what he's doing over there so I can... And I'm going to keep doing the thing I want to do.
No one did that.
So, once that happens... You just put a bunch of points into something, and then you go, I just wasted an hour.
It seems that there were two separate mindsets in two different groups. One was collaboratively creating, because even though they didn't directly do any fuck games, all of those races interacted. There were trade alliances, there were disagreements, there were wars. All of that still happened. And then in the second concept, people were looking at the points and ferociously trying to gobble things up for their nations, where sometimes there was not logical thought to it here, where here people were still building the steps kind of like you would like. So before they had glass blowing, the people did, I forget what the steps were.
They built things in steps as to like a storyline reasoning why to get there.
So over here, it wasn't a mad dash to go, I want this and this and this and this. And I guess I'm thinking over here, there was also discussion, like, I think people were like, hey, I kind of want this for my people.
Is that okay?
Which I think never happened with us. So there were differences in how things went down the entire time. I think in our second run of it, there was a sense of competitiveness from the beginning that never left. And then when we added new people and we changed the way the point structure worked, there were certain people that still felt slighted and competitive going further into it. The other problem is, for you and me definitely, as we were going through the process, we were trying to spend those points to fill out things that we had already kind of done. Yeah. So the entire time you were sitting behind the 8 ball going, I hope I get enough points to build this. I hope I get enough points to build this. I hope I get
Just
enough
so,
points.
yeah, we get back to square one in the world creation.
So that probably also didn't help any.
Yeah, but I'm saying if everybody was just in the world at the thing, like we could a discussion. If everybody can be, if we get an idea of how much can happen in any given age or time period.
I like the
turn.
point. I like the point system. I do like it because in a real world, there are some societies that are going to fall behind where others don't.
Yeah, but no, that's the thing though. See, you say the competitiveness thing, but there's some societies that will fall behind when some don't. Each player shouldn't be just putting things into their own society.
No.
Each player should be having an avatar in each other player's things because each player should be able to come to the table with a little bit of how the story works.
But the thing is,
to come to an agreement.
None of us ever did it. Actually, the only time it was done, it ended up being seen as such an aggressive affront that it caused massive problems.
What?
When things were done to the Aasimar.
What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do I mean?
The catastrophe?
Before the catastrophe, the alignment shifts. Like the thing is, even then, you guys were doing things aggressively towards one another.
What do you mean? What alignment shifts?
The alignment shift to the Aasimar.
That was done by the person who created the Aasimar. I
turning them
turned
evil. And then he created an avatar. Because you created an avatar. He created the avatar of What's-Her-Nuts. You created Thralmar. He tried to shift them good. You shifted them evil. He shifted good. You shifted evil. Like you guys
the first thing was when I told everybody, hey, I've built this plateau and I have a plan for it. And then somebody said, I'm going to take all of the thing you just put points into and take that. Again, I just put a ton of points into a vision and then with no discussion, another player just goes, I don't like that vision.
There should have been more discussion to it. But the thing is, like in our second run of this, my second experience with the game, it seemed like from the beginning there was more fuck game versus collaborative creation.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's why I think a discussion would just be better because the point system lends itself to that because one person gets more points than the other, so they get to go. I get to build my thing, and what else do I want to do with other people's stuff? Or, as opposed to just discussing.
I think the points are fine. I think discussion should be more on the table.
I think discussion should be the final arbiter.
Discussion would be the final arbiter.
If everybody agrees, well, then what's the point of the points? Because then if everybody goes, actually, it'd be really cool if we just did that anyway. I know we didn't get the points for it, but the story makes sense, and all of us came to the conclusion, so we're just going to do it anyway. And you're going to toss the points out. So what's the point of the points?
Because then you don't have rounds, you don't have ages, and you don't have a progression through time.
You do. You guys set, like I said earlier in this, you guys determine about how much can be done in each turn. And what that means in an age.
Now you have to sit down and create this. You have a baseline already there. If you use the baseline more effective, like I said...
Okay, then give everybody the same amount of points.
Okay,
because there'll still be some civilizations that are faster than others because some people are going to be doing things in multiple things. Some people are going to be focusing on one thing for a certain period of time. Okay. There'll be golden ages and then fallouts. But the idea that one player can roll 4 points a turn while another player can roll 12 points a turn and get that's...
I don't know. I don't see a problem with it. Again, the reason I don't see... No,
you're interacting every turn too.
What?
You're interacting every turn. Every turn you're literally with the player making notes and you're in there with that.
The first time I wasn't. I didn't have a problem with it the first time. Really? Remember, the first time I was just a player.
Oh, well, also you were doing things each turn too that were like nobody took away the mountains you built and the forests you built and the desert you built.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I've seen it in 2 different ways. I've seen it played in a truly collaborative sense and I've seen it played in this competitive fuck game. What we did was very aggressive and very irritating at times. What we did over here seemed like everyone was creating and it was fun. This was fun at times, but then at times it broke down to people just trying to take over other people's ideas and just like smack. This was bulls moving through a china shop without breaking anything. This was bulls trying to smash everything in sight. That's the difference. So I've seen both sides, which is why I'm saying it works if you want it to work. The problem is with this group, even though everyone was saying we want it to work, not really.
Well, yeah, because if if everybody says we want this to work, and then somebody senses aggression from somebody, they're going to be defensive.
Sure.
That's the way things work.
Like I said, it
so
was
things
a
are
difference.
supposed to be discussed and as a reason to why and a thing to why. So like for me, for instance, one of the things, as soon as we get to the point of we're not making reasons for why we're doing the things we're doing. Okay, well, I could have done a ton of stuff already then. I was actually putting points into building the reasons that they happened. Yeah. So I was building it in this process. If I could have went to the end and said this is exactly what they're like by the time the game starts, because I'm just going to give them this, this, and this, then you know what I'm saying? Like,
can you be more specific other than the words this, and this?
If the people who control the water are excellent shipbuilders, excellent mercantiles, and excellent all of that, right? Mm-hmm. Like,
they're excellent shipbuilders, and then eventually they became mercantile. What was the other one?
They also had excellent cannon builders, artillery.
They bought that right before war, which was shite, but. The ones that they do have before.
How many years did it take for them to get some of those things? Was it Second Age though, right? When they got mercantilism.
Mercantilism was middle Second Age,
and then the other two.
The other two, first. Shipbuilding, they started with, which that one I have problems with. But then over 500 years of playing exploration, they became cartographers.
Okay, that makes sense. What happened? Well, we're going to spend the year, but here's the thing. There was an order to create a cartographer. There was like an order of people mapping things.
They, as a race, were nomads mapping the entire landmass, or the coastal region of the landmass, which is how they became cartographers.
Where did they go to condense this information and exchange it with each other?
I think around the same time that they picked up cartography is when they built their first flotilla city.
See, so they build the first flotilla city, and then there would be an order created of people who are collecting all the maps that other people have created, and then that order would eventually expertise
you could
photography.
you could make the argument for the order, but if the people as a whole have a set of communication and they are continuing to communicate, travel, and share maps, and then they build a city, you don't need the order to have cartography. Now, for you to be master map makers, it would make more sense for there to be an order, since the people are already good map makers.
That's what I thought it means. Is cartography means you're master map makers. Your people as a people are master map makers.
Yes, they as a people make good maps. But now, for you to be like, this city is where all of the world's best maps are. For you to have an order before, that makes sense. You don't need an order just to get advancement in this. It means the civilization as a whole
is the best at it.
Have become premier at it. They become known for their
map making.
You don't need an order for that. It means that all the people.
There's no training place. There's no school that would have developed it. There's no order that would have developed it. They just naturally, as a people, all of them. So what you're saying now is not
every person. It is a civilization. Just because we Americans are good at making cars, which I don't think we are, but just because we as Americans are good at making cars, doesn't mean that all Americans know how to make cars.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, it does when the reasoning behind why it happened is because all of the people make maps because they're all nomadic. Now, all of the people are mastered.
And everyone else can make maps. It just means that the people, the race, the civilization makes better maps than everyone else. Doesn't mean that every person makes great maps.
How did the maps get made to be great maps? What was the reasoning behind it?
They were nomads traveling.
And all of the nomads that were traveling made maps.
Yes, and they all...
So all of them have the same mapping skills.
They all collated the maps, and now that you have...
No, they didn't collate anything. Because if they collated the maps, that means there would have been an order or some group that collated them.
It doesn't need an order if the orders aren't just for...
The nomads don't even have a meetup place.
They built a city.
Then they do cartography. That's what I'm saying.
They did it in the same turn. It's 500 years.
Well, no, I'm saying... But, okay, so they built the city, and then... I thought it was cartography first, and then they built the city.
The city and cartography came in the same turn.
Oh, okay, well then the city builds cartography. So the coalition happens there, but still that seems like an order, really.
It doesn't need to be, though.
Yeah. No, I'm saying if you were going to build if you and I were going to build the backstory to it.
It would make more sense for
what would we put in the, like if you and me were like, okay, well let's fill in the blanks here of the game.
We would build an order, but the thing is, it doesn't need to be.
So then what needs to be expressed is everybody needs to be on the same page there. Because if I'm on the other end of the world going, okay, I want to do this, but before I do this, I have to make an order to make it make sense.
People were advancing civilizations without orders the entire time. So why you had that
Which
concept?
ones did I advance without orders? Besides
I didn't say you.
humans?
I said other people.
Yeah, I know, but according to the rules, these are the things that
Nowhere in advanced civilization said you needed an order to.
No, I'm just saying like it would like if you look at like the steps necessary like rationally in the whole point is to create a story. Like the point of this isn't to have points and put them down on the thing and be like, look how cool this is or look how cool that is. It's to make a connected story.
Okay.
So that later there's less to fill in.
So as a people, just listen here. As a people, we build lots of ships. Because we build lots of ships, we end up building better ships than everyone else. We don't have an order yet to build specifically the best ships.
Okay, time out. Where are your people located that build these ships?
On the coast.
On the coast. So they're located on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
So they get their wood from nearby.
Yes.
Okay. That already makes more sense than...
I wasn't using the Menang because
okay.
the reason they have things doesn't make a lot of sense. There's going to have to be extra lines drawn for them. But I have a coastal people. We build ships. We've been building ships forever. I advanced my civilization in shipbuilding. We are the best shipbuilders in the world. It doesn't stop you from making metal ships. It doesn't stop you from being the best ship weapon builders. It just means that we build really great ships. You might be like, they build really great ships. My civilization actually is not premier at building ships. We're premier at building man of war. We don't build small ships. The only ships we ever build, if we are going to build a ship, it needs to hold at least 100 cannons. If it doesn't hold 100 cannons, we don't bother with it. Yeah, they build the best all-around ship, and they build tons of different styles of ship. But if you want a man of war, if you want a big ship, you come to us.
Yeah. But that means that you would have built up technologies for...
Sure, it would make more sense for you to go... if you wanted shipbuilding, technically, I guess, it would make sense if you went this way, is first you would take something like... forestry, so
Carpentry.
You have forestry first.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So you'd have.
So you have a effective system of wood gathering.
You don't need to take forestry though. You can say that you have an effective. You just don't have the best wood gathering.
Okay, but then the side effect of not having forestry
is it makes it a lot harder to become an expert shipbuilder.
Without forestry, it means that you're also being wasteful with your wood because you're not having anyone tend to it, replant.
So like when Koku was doing things, we had impacts that happened in response to that. Like.
We talked about because they were using so much coal for their steam technology that they were wiping out the forests of Tashir, and that they were going to start, and that's the entire reason they built the land bridge down to the
so
jungle.
They could get access to more forest. Yeah, so it developed out and created other things in response to it.
I'm saying that what we
like
did wasn't the most
right
effective. The flotilla...
Real quick, and like you're talking about a flotilla that's pretty much constantly exists.
Yeah.
So that means the person in the center of the flotilla, they're not leaving.
No.
Not anytime soon. Not in years.
Not ever.
Yeah,
I'm
so it's going to start becoming a more permanent
together.
structure.
In my concept, it is a permanent...
into a building, not just some ships.
I don't know about it ever becoming a tall building. That's not sensible for on the water, brother.
Why?
It really isn't.
At some point in time, they're just laying down wooden entire flat panels and things like that.
Because... the bigger it becomes, the more it moves. They're out in the middle of the ocean. It's not like they don't use magic. Very specifically, they haven't been using magic. So it's really lashed together ships, barges. It's not ever going to become a 5-story building.
Well, no, because when he first described what he wanted, he was talking about Waterworld. In Waterworld, you have high walls and stuff. They're just made out of thin material.
High wall, like Waterworld, high walls. What do you mean by high? None of those walls were higher than the
4 stories, 5 stories.
No.
Yes, the big gate that opens up into the thing that you
the
go into the city.
big gate that opens up is no bigger than maybe the
like 40,
middle of the
40,
frickin' main mast.
40, 50 feet.
No.
What are you talking about?
No way.
You need to go check out Waterworld again.
You need to go check out Waterworld again.
They
the
literally
biggest
went upstairs.
thing.
He's held in a cage.
The biggest
on
thing,
a thing
in the middle. Yeah, it's not that big, dude. It's like 2 stories. It's like 25 feet at max.
How big is it around?
It was big enough to float off of the side of Hawaii without it being noticed. It's not big. It's like around your property big.
The side of Hawaii?
Yeah, that's where they filmed it, and that floating thing, they built it. They literally built, like, for real built it.
But, you know, I don't know. Is it represented as being that small? I think...
Yes. It's not huge. The biggest thing in Waterworld that they represent on film was the tanker, and that was big.
Well, tankers are huge, though.
Yeah, it was a tanker. No, the tallest thing is no taller than a man of war.
I didn't know that. That's kind of...
No, Waterworld didn't have 4-story buildings. It didn't. Not that big.
That's incredibly not as epic as I remember as a child.
Probably felt 4 stories big because you were a child. So the perspective from which your mind was working was what you would see in a 2 to 3 story building.
So, all I'm saying is, if the best features of the last time this game worked out were cooperative talking anyway, why not just have cooperative talking and create a small system to understand how the agents
Because the
work?
point system still allowed this shifting of things.
Yeah,
happening.
But if I'm sitting here going, man, I'm totally creating this because I have a plan for this person to die and the catastrophe to happen anyway, because that's the point of making the world.
And then you just talk to the other person. But I get
it. And then we go, how
the
long do you think that'll
collaborative
happen over? Okay, well, while you're doing that, this country will be doing this
the
over the
collaborative
same
talking was good.
Yeah.
The point system allowed certain things to have lulls where you didn't have enough points to do it. So right now the society isn't having the ability to get it for whatever reason.
Here's the problem. You're having a lull. None of the societies are having anything happen. You don't have points to spend anyway. Just pass your turn. Do you dig what I'm saying? Like, it's not that there's a lull in this one civilization. It's the whole board now is unaffected during that turn by that player. Otherwise, every single civilization is having a lull that could be affected by that player during that period of time. That player has no input.
I don't see...
The player has no input for 500 years. Or, heck, if it's you roll 3 turns in a row, it's there's 1,500 years of the history that player isn't even involved in.
Go look at the points thing. With 3 points, you can affect stuff.
If
you have avatars with 1 point...
Yeah, when you're having avatars.
So, I don't see what your point is. Because the thing is, you should have built at least one avatar.
Yeah.
The point is to have avatars, so even when you have a lull...
Well, that's the problem is when you don't have enough points to reach Avatar.
Sure you do.
2 or 3 turns.
If you have played from the first thing and you've kept under 5 points, which is super easy to do, you have 3 points automatically every turn.
Yeah.
So if you roll the bare minimum...
Oh, 4. You can make 1 Avatar, and then you wait the next turn to do the thing.
Yeah. So, I'm not seeing your point.
Well, I had to create... my thing, I had to create the races that were already...
I see why you felt like it. It's because
I was already investing in...
You and me were playing from behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
But if you take that part out of it, the points...
Well,
even if
I
you
don't
roll...
have a perspective of that. Because the most I ever got done during the game was when we all just talked. And we all got to collaboratively create how this thing kind of was going to work.
But then, ultimately, coming back to it, we did the collaborative creation, but how much really got created? Not enough. That's why I came back wanting to do it in the first place. Not enough got created.
When we did the post-creation, you and me got done 2, 3, the things we're building now, the hobgoblins and the humans. And
the reason that we had the basis to build any of it...
was off that, yeah.
Was off that, which is what I was hoping to use it for anyways. I just want a skeleton. I'll put the meat on it. I'll throw the lungs and all the guts in it.
Okay, I was thinking that with
it'd be more fun to have everyone involved. But if all I'm gonna get is argumentative, aggressive, fuck games, I'll still take that skeleton.
Well, no, but like at the end when me and Austin were talking about the frost giants and the humans, we were like, okay, well, could we do it something like with the dragons and how that plays out?
Sure.
Yeah, and then it's just like, okay, everybody kind of gets a cool story.
But you wouldn't have had the basis to build any of that without what came before.
What do you mean? I would have said, hey, Austin and guys, we're going to start a human colony up here. And over the course of about 1,500 to 2,000 years, it's going to develop into these 6 cities. And then we're going to find a reason for it to fall for some reason.
Sure. You could have done all of that. And you probably were going to put them there. But how the dragons interacted with this war happening down here and then coming back up there, and the extra steps for other shit happening at the same time doesn't happen without the round-by-round play. This creates a flow of the world where crap is happening here, here, and here.
Yeah, I get you.
And you could, in a collaborative room, still have that happen, but it will happen less ergonomically because you don't have a basis for these guys suddenly going to war because, well, first off, that war didn't make sense. But even if you came up with a reason for it to make sense, right now your attention is on the humans up here. And we're not really thinking about these guys down here because right now we're up here. But in the world, shit happens here and here
there.
at the same
But that's
time.
not going to happen when you only have a few amount of points over a course of 500 years to split amongst things.
Sure.
So something's not going to happen
No,
here.
wait.
Like the Kuatai are in the south of our map, right?
You
From
never
the
did-
first stage.
you
never
never
did
did
anything.
anything with
Why?
them.
Because I had to catch up and do stuff with other things.
But
So
you,
if I had done stuff
wait,
with the Kuatai,
wait.
nothing would be done with the
No,
beaver and
wait.
the human now.
The only reason you were stuck with that is because we put ourselves behind the 8-ball. Now imagine you weren't playing behind the 8-ball and you had actually had ideas and intentions for the Kuatai, which you unfortunately didn't have. Other than you wanted neutral Kuatai, that was the...
I had discussion and stuff that we discussed in the post. I had ideas for the Kuatai too. Remember? We talked about what they were going to do and how they were going to spread out and trade down.
honestly have
and
no...
then the Behemoth thing happened, or the Tiamat thing, or whatever happened, and it plagued some of the lands up there, and then they never pushed back forward north of that because of the Naga thing that was happening in the forest. And we developed
Did
most
we
of that.
have that conversation?
Yeah,
I
we
don't
developed a whole
remember
bunch of
anything
stuff
about
out.
the Kuatai. So this
Yeah,
is
'cause the
almost
Kuatai were also
feeling
at
like new
war with
information to me.
Remember there was a evil fish race in the bay there?
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't remember that? You
I
don't remember
don't.
the Ganassi that were in the thing with the blue sapphire?
I remember the Ganassi way up in the north,
With
but
the
that
blue
had nothing
sapphire
to do
floor.
with the Kuatai.
Yeah, well, no, that's the trade with the Otterfolk people, and then there was the evil thing and the split.
I remember the Otterfolk. I don't.
Yeah, we talked about all of this.
I don't have anything for the
in the
Kuatai.
post.
The thing is, if we had that much for the Kuatai, you didn't even have names for the city or the shaman. Like
Yeah.
you had no ideas.
Yeah, I know, because all the stuff we talked about, wherever it is down, it wasn't on the list of stuff I had.
Yeah,
I, had
I
this
remember
one page.
talking extensively about the Otterfolk and the Beaverfolk. I know we talked about the Ganassi, which don't exist anymore.
Yeah. We also talked about what other races we were placing along the world, including like the evil fish people in the Bay Area. Yeah, on the outside of the Bay.
I believe
'Cause
it.
there
I
weren't
don't
enough
remember it.
evil
Clearly, it didn't sink into me. But the point is, your frustration right now with the game is you were back playing, trying to cover things that we had discussed.
I'm just think that there's better ways to.
Are there? Oh, fuck. Of course there's better ways. What I'm saying is that this point system, even though it has areas that suck, even if you get the minimum amount of points, you still have enough to do things.
Yeah.
Your opinion, which is a valid one to you, is if you have no points, you can't do anything. But if you've been playing the game as it extends, if you have no points, then you've been spending them. And if you've been spending them, you start each round with 3 points. Before you even touch the dice, you have 3 points.
Yeah, but what I mean to say is, like, again, in a small map, even you're building up the one group of people. Like you could. Yeah, like I said, it's a conclusion. My conclusion so far is I think that just open discussion with mature people across a long story, like if you were writing a script together,
I think,
or if you were in a room together creating a story, that is the better of it, because everybody should be able to agree in a working way, because that's how role playing is anyway.
Yeah.
All role playing is this, and I like that Joey's idea where you have a random thing that can control the like an extra fate of the people. That way, there's a
could be-
randomness kind of tossed in there
that
too.
is something that could be interesting. I hate their conflict system. That needs to go. And with the conflict system going, the idea of having to spend extra points to build armies kind of goes out.
Yeah, you figure out what you want to do. Like for us, we have the humans, which I had put a ton of points into, but the whole point was they were supposed to eventually collapse, and so then the dragons want to go to war with them. So I'm like, okay, the dragons go to war. They flip this north thing. What if before we did that, what we said was the dragons convinced them to fight the trolls together, so they formed an alliance,
Sure.
and then they got backstabbed, and that led to the death of the king. So now the people have
You have other ideas,
anti-dragon
but-
slant, and they're all broken into pieces now.
But here's the thing: even though you were going to expand those people, right? Because you were.
No,
Okay.
that was pretty much where they
No,
were.
no, I know you were going to expand them to what you did. Up until the Frost Trolls ended up there, which I didn't even initially pre-plan. I was just like, I don't want the Frost Troll thing to be here. I looked at like 3 places in the northern area, and I was like, actually, the closest connection, if they managed to get across the water, would be right here, so I put them right there. The only reason you have a natural enemy now is because I randomly put something there.
Yeah. And so they build up
And
defenses.
did I spend? Now, of course, I'm approaching it with thought processes from this. Did I spend a lot of extra time trying to aggressively, like, stomp on it? No, they became a natural threat. They didn't need an army. They're just a natural threat. That's all they needed.
Yeah.
They got a second breeding pit.
And so the idea for me is to go to that second breeding pit and attack them with an alliance with the dragons.
Yeah, which will be
betray
cool.
them.
But if I hadn't had
trolls
the
get hopefully
avatar
wiped out
to
and
randomly
scattered.
pop an avatar to...
But what I'm saying though is if we made all of that last part up with discussion, we make all the first parts up with discussion. We literally go just the same way we would like. Okay, so I was thinking about humans. What do you guys think of humans in the Nord area? Because we already did that kind of in the game anyway.
You could.
Oh, okay,
I'm not
cool.
saying that what you're doing wouldn't work. I'm saying that this point structure maybe run a bunch more efficiently. There's a lot of efficiency lost in it, but run gives you this spread of things you can do. It does focus you down a little more on your options. It's not just I want some humans that are going to be the masters at this one thing, and that's all they're going to do. Or, like, up until the trolls were there, did you think that you wanted your humans to do shield formation?
What when they got to why did my humans pick shield formation? They're Nordic people, and they now had a threat. So at any point in time, a threat came to them, and I needed to find something. And fortification was the first one I went to that was already taken. I would have went with something else that fits their cultural style.
And that's fine. But the thing is, until there was an aggressive threat, which honestly, you've had dragons in the area since the time that the nation existed.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The dragons are in the mountains to the north of you. They've been there for
and,
generations.
They've never interacted at any
they never
time
interacted.
Ever. So as far as we know, they don't exist.
That's an argument you could make.
I'm just saying, like, that's the thing. Is like this isn't defined. Dawn of Worlds is vague.
Oh, it's
so here's
super
the
vague.
problem. If all of us come to a table and we're going, hey, what's the mission? The mission is to work with each other as much as possible to make a thing work.
Yeah.
Then what we're going to do in that is try to define
We're going to talk and define
what's happening.
Yeah.
But in this, what's going to happen is people like me that define things one way are going to look at and read something and go, oh, for me to affect somebody else's thing, I have to... Not just they have to have an order there that I can command their order. No, I have to build an order to command the order. It literally says that. It says it in the thing.
You need an avatar.
No.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you can do...
You need an avatar.
You can do the avatar route. It's not just the avatar route, though. You can also command order. But it says the order already has to exist. So does that mean that I have to build an order?
No.
So, but there's the thing, though. It's not defined. So because of that...
No, because unless you have an avatar...
And no one brought it up. And no one talked about it.
Unless you have an avatar, you can't command race to create order. You can't.
I thought that there was a way to go through without it.
You can use their order.
Well, we'll read that and we'll check it out and then bring it back up next time, I guess.
That's fine.
And what's the other thing that we were thinking about discussing next time on this?
Microscope.
Microscope. Yeah. So microscope, and we'll talk about this and maybe ways we can pull stuff from this and microscope to get a more smooth system.
Yes.
And in the meantime, y'all have a lovely night, day. Well, it's midday now.
Happy 4th of July.
Yeah, happy 4th of July.
If you're here.
For sure.
This has been the